Inside that silence, something didn't feel right. A phone that normally buzzed non-stop had gone still. Messages were left on read. Calls rang out into nothing. And somewhere between those quiet moments and the shocking headlines that followed, a storm of questions began to form around one name that fans never expected to lose so suddenly. Yu Menglong. What really happened to Yu Menglong? Was everything exactly as first reported? Or is there more beneath the surface that hasn't fully come to light? In this deep dive, you're about to uncover the timeline that sparked online speculation, the small details fans can't stop talking about, and the rumors that continue to swirl months after his tragic passing. Stick with me to the end, because what you're about to hear might completely change how you see this case. Let's get into it. When news first broke on September 11, 2025, the reaction was immediate and emotional. Yu Menglong wasn't just another celebrity headline. To millions of fans, he was the soft-spoken star with the gentle smile, the actor who seemed to carry warmth wherever he went. Tributes flooded social media within minutes. Old drama clips resurfaced. Fan edits appeared almost instantly. But mixed in with the grief was something else, something quieter but persistent. Confusion. Because from the very beginning, many observers felt the public information surrounding his passing was unusually limited. Official statements were brief. Details about the timeline were tightly controlled. Updates came slowly. Now, to be clear, this is not uncommon in sensitive investigations. Authorities often release only confirmed facts to prevent misinformation. But in high-profile cases, silence can sometimes create space for speculation to grow. And in this case, speculation grew fast. One of the earliest discussion points among fans centered around Yu Menglong's final public appearances. Just days before September 11, he had reportedly maintained a normal professional schedule. No visible signs of distress. No public disputes. No dramatic social media posts that hinted something was wrong. In fact, colleagues who had recently interacted with him described him as focused and calm. That contrast between his outward normalcy and the sudden tragedy became one of the first emotional triggers for online communities. People started asking, did anyone notice anything unusual? Were there warning signs that went unseen? Or did everything truly change in a single unexpected moment? As weeks passed, the conversation shifted. Online forums began carefully analyzing small fragments of publicly available information. Fans compared timelines, revisited interviews, re-examined past photos and live streams. Most of what they found was ordinary, routine. Nothing obviously alarming. But sometimes in mysteries like this, it's not what stands out, it's what doesn't. And for many supporters, the biggest lingering feeling was that the full picture of Yu Menglong's final hours remained emotionally incomplete. Then came the wave of rumors. Let's be very clear here, rumors are not facts. In high-profile celebrity cases, speculation often spreads faster than verified information. And in Yu Menglong's case, the online environment became especially intense. Some discussions focused on the timeline gaps between his last confirmed public activity and the moment news broke. Others questioned why certain investigative details were not publicly expanded upon. A few even pointed to the now widely discussed forensic chatter about trace evidence being re-examined, a development that, while not officially confirmed as suspicious, reignited curiosity across fan communities. What made the situation even more emotionally charged was Yu Menglong's public image. He wasn't known for controversy. He wasn't frequently surrounded by scandal. He was, by most accounts, seen as steady, professional, and quietly dedicated to his craft. And that's exactly why the suddenness of September 11 hit so hard. Because the human brain searches for patterns. For warning signs. For something that explains the unexplainable. When those patterns don't immediately appear, the questions linger longer. Industry insiders, for the most part, have remained respectful and measured in their public comments. Most statements from colleagues and entertainment figures have focused on honoring Yu Menglong's legacy rather than engaging with speculation. But online, the conversation has never fully cooled. Months later, discussion threads continue to resurface. New fans discovering his work stumble into the mystery for the first time. Longtime supporters still revisit the timeline, hoping for clarity that feels emotionally satisfying. And perhaps the most powerful driver behind all of this is something deeply human. Closure. Because for many fans, Yu Menglong wasn't just an actor on a screen. He was part of their daily routine, their comfort watch, their favorite character, their quiet source of joy after long days. When someone like that is suddenly gone, the heart naturally searches for answers. It's important to remember that complex investigations often take time, sometimes far longer than the public expects. Not every detail becomes public. Not every forensic review leads to dramatic conclusions. And sometimes, cases that feel mysterious from the outside ultimately have explanations grounded in ordinary reality. But emotional truth and official timelines don't always move at the same speed. That's why this story continues to resonate. Because even now, long after September 11, 2025, the question still echoes across comment sections and fan spaces. What really happened to Yu Menglong? Was it simply a tragic, sudden loss that stunned everyone? Or are there still small pieces of the timeline that fans hope will one day be clarified? At this moment, no publicly confirmed evidence has established wrongdoing connected to his passing. Investigations, when active, follow careful procedures, and speculation alone cannot substitute for verified findings. Still, the emotional weight of the unanswered questions remains powerful for many who followed his journey. And maybe that's why his story continues to trend whenever his name resurfaces. Because sometimes, the impact of a person's life is measured not just by the roles they played, but by the silence they leave behind. Yu Menglong's gentle presence on screen made millions smile. His sudden absence made millions pause. And the conversation around September 11, 2025 shows no sign of completely fading anytime soon. So now I want to turn the conversation over to you. Do you believe the public already knows the full story surrounding Yu Menglong's passing? Or do you feel there are still unanswered questions that deserve more clarity? What moment in his career made you connect with him the most? And why do you think this case continues to hold such a strong emotional grip on fans worldwide? The air inside the evidence room felt different that night, heavier, almost like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Because even though the headlines had already swept across the world, inside the investigation into Yu Menglong's September 11, 2025 case, Part 1 was far from emotionally settled. And the deeper analysts looked, the more the timeline refused to feel simple. Let's slow this down and focus exactly where the tension truly began, the early window of uncertainty that still keeps fans talking. In the first hours after the shocking news broke, everything moved fast on the surface. Official confirmations came out. Tributes flooded social media. Industry figures expressed heartbreak. But behind the scenes, investigators were quietly doing something far more methodical. They were reconstructing time. Minute by minute. Message by message. Movement by movement. Because in any sudden high-profile death, the first critical step is always the same: build the cleanest possible picture of the final known hours. And according to discussions that later circulated among observers of the case, this was where the first layer of quiet tension emerged. Not because of something dramatic, but because of something subtle. Yu Menglong's final publicly visible activities appeared, at least on the surface, remarkably normal. No alarming public posts. No visible distress signals. No widely reported confrontations. For investigators, normal timelines are usually reassuring. But for emotionally invested fans watching from the outside, the normalcy itself became unsettling. Because sudden loss without visible warning often leaves the biggest emotional void. Inside fan communities, people began retracing his last known movements almost immediately after the news broke. Old schedules were pulled up. Appearance dates were cross-checked. Even small social media interactions were revisited. What they found was a pattern that looked calm. Too calm, some felt. Of course, professionals familiar with investigations repeatedly emphasize something important: outward normalcy does not always reflect private reality. Many cases that appear sudden from the outside ultimately have explanations that only become clear through careful forensic and medical review. Still, the emotional response online was already building momentum. Then came one of the most talked about early elements of Part 1, the reported timeline gap. Now, it's crucial to approach this carefully. Timeline gaps in early reporting are not unusual. Initial information in unfolding cases is often incomplete, and details typically become clearer over time. But in this situation, observers noticed that the publicly described sequence of events left some moments less clearly detailed than fans expected. Not necessarily suspicious. Not necessarily unusual. But noticeable enough to spark conversation. And once the internet starts asking questions, it rarely stops. Late-night discussion threads began appearing across fan spaces. Supporters compared notes. Some urged patience, reminding others that investigations often take time to fully clarify. Others, however, felt the emotional weight of the situation demanded more transparency. One fan comment that circulated widely captured the mood perfectly. "We're not trying to assume anything, we just want to understand." That sentence alone explains why Part 1 of this story continues to hold so much attention. Because at its core, this isn't driven by sensationalism. It's driven by human attachment. Yu Menglong wasn't just another celebrity headline. For many viewers, he represented comfort, consistency, and quiet warmth on screen. Losing someone with that image so suddenly created a deep emotional ripple. And when emotions run deep, even small uncertainties can feel magnified. Meanwhile, inside the professional side of the investigation, standard procedures were reportedly moving forward exactly as expected. Evidence collection, scene documentation, forensic processing, medical review. All of it methodical. All of it careful. All of it, from an investigative standpoint, routine. But the public rarely sees investigations through the lens of procedure. The public sees through the lens of feeling. And feeling was exactly what fueled the next wave of speculation. As days turned into weeks after September 11th, online observers began revisiting Yu Menglong's final public moments with almost cinematic intensity. Fans slowed down video clips, zoomed into background details, reread old interviews searching for hidden meaning that likely was never intended. This kind of digital deep dive isn't uncommon in high-profile cases, especially when the person involved had a strong emotional connection with their audience. But what made this Part 1 phase particularly powerful was how quickly the narrative split into two emotional camps. One side believed firmly that the situation, while tragic, would ultimately align with official findings once all reviews were complete. The other side felt an unshakable sense that something about the timeline still felt unfinished. Not proven. Not confirmed. Just emotionally unresolved. And in the world of online communities, emotional uncertainty can be incredibly persistent. What added another layer of intrigue was the reported quietness from close industry voices in the immediate aftermath. Again, this is not unusual. In sensitive moments, many colleagues choose to grieve privately rather than speak publicly. But to fans already feeling unsettled, the relative silence only deepened the atmosphere of mystery surrounding those early days. Still, experts continue to stress a grounded reality. Complex cases often appear more mysterious from the outside than they actually are. Investigations unfold in layers. Medical findings take time. Forensic reviews require patience. And public information is often intentionally limited during active reviews to prevent misinformation from spreading. All of that remains true. And yet, the emotional grip of Part 1 has never fully loosened. Because the human mind doesn't just process facts. It processes feelings. And the feeling many fans still describe when thinking back to September 11th, 2025 is simple but powerful. Shock that never fully settled. That's why even now, months later, the early timeline continues to be revisited in conversations across fan spaces. Not because definitive new conclusions have been publicly announced, but because the emotional story of those first hours still feels unfinished to many who followed him closely. And maybe that's the real reason this case continues to hold attention. Sometimes the loudest mysteries aren't built on dramatic evidence. Sometimes they grow from quiet moments that don't quite line up in the hearts of the people watching. Right now, Part 1 remains exactly where it has been since the beginning, a space filled with verified facts, careful investigations, and an emotional community still searching for a sense of closure. Whether future clarifications will change anything significant remains to be seen. But one thing is already certain. The memory of Yu Menglong and the questions surrounding that September day are not fading anytime soon. Now I want to hear directly from you. When you look back at the early timeline of Yu Menglong's September 11, 2025 case, do you feel everything has been clearly explained? Or do you still sense that some emotional pieces of Part 1 remain unresolved? Which moment in his final public appearances stood out to you the most? And why do you think fans around the world are still so deeply invested in understanding what happened? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. Your voice is a big part of this conversation. If this continuation pulled you deeper into the story, make sure you like the video, share it with other fans who are still following Yu Menglong's case, and subscribe to the channel for more gripping deep dives you won't want to miss. Your support keeps the discussion alive, and your perspective truly matters.